Okay, our fourth and final game is Crash Bandicoot 2 Cortex Strikes Back. I'm assuming Cortex is a figure of significance in Crash Bandicoot lore.
Yeah, Dr. Neo-Cortex, the big bad, Crash's arch rival, the Dr. Wily to his Mega Man, if you will.
I also believe he's also Crash Bandicoot's creator, if I remember the creation myth of the Crash Bandicoot character.
He impregnated a female Bandicoot.
I believe he impregnated Torna.
They dropped her fast.
Well, we'll get into that. So
right.
Crash
This
Bandicoot.
is Crash 2. We don't get to talk about Torna. Sorry,
No, we
Paul.
do, actually. Crash Bandicoot 2, which was developed by Naughty Dog, published by Sony Computer Entertainment of America.
And Universal Interactive.
Whatever they are. In 1997, I think. Is that correct?
Right.
So it was a big seller. It's notable, according to Wikipedia, for being the best-selling Western-made game for the PlayStation, having sold 800,000 copies in Japan, which is amazing because Japan only has 400,000 people in it.
That brings me to a small rant, of which I might have more than one.
Well, let's. Oh God.
Is it okay if I go?
Well, can I just finish my preamble here?
Yes, go ahead.
Because I'm going to do some more introductory info. So, which I find weird because you'd think that Twisted Metal 2 would have been the biggest selling game.
I thought Final Fantasy VII might have been that, honestly.
Western development.
Oh, of course, jeez. I already am failing. I'll shut up now, forever.
Apparently, also according to Wikipedia, which means it is 100% true, Coco the whatever was created for this game because Sony of Japan was quote unquote uncomfortable with Tawny. Was it Tawny? Is that it? Or
Torna, Tawna.
Tawna, the was she a bandicoot or was she? It was some kind of interspecies romance. Tawna, the bandicoot, was too super sexy, according to Wikipedia, to be hanging out with Crash. I have no idea what that means.
She had breasts the size of a planetoid.
Yes, but why would that trouble the nation of Japan is what I'm asking.
That's a really good question. I don't want to dwell on this too much.
This is also the country that censored all the sex scenes in God of War, so you tell me.
I think it's just because they didn't do it, or are they just not into anthropomorphic boobs on marsupials? I don't know. These are questions maybe I don't want answered. Anyway, so they created the character of Coco, right? Who is, I guess, as far as I play the game, it's just a disembodied head.
She's in the intro.
She's in the intro.
So I gotta throw this right out here. I don't like the Crash Bandicoot games. I was actually but I don't have a strong opinion about them because I wasn't aware that anybody cared about them still.
Don't worry, super fans. We'll be locking him in the cage shortly.
No, it's fine. I totally understand that I'm
Me, on the other hand, I'm going to be coming to this with a heavy positive bias because this was the first PS1 game I played that was not Star Wars Masters of Terras Kasi or a demo disc.
Oh
and
my
the PS1
God.
is pretty much my favorite console, so I like this game very much.
The first games you played for the PlayStation were Star Wars Master of Terras Kasi in a demo disc. That's like saying the first movie you saw was the Tidy Bowl commercial. I don't know. But yeah, sorry. I don't know.
I always felt even nowadays, the classic Crash games always get kind of a bad rap.
Do they? I thought nobody cared about them one way or the other. That's what surprised me.
Crash is one of those franchises where they kept making bad games. So every so often, people would go to your game retailer and be like, "Hey, they released another crap game. Look at that."
Does it defeat the Sonic ratio of good classic games to everything else?
Kinda, yeah, because
there's not as many of them, right?
Well,
if you want to go on ratio, Sonic might actually lose out because there's so much crap that Sonic has been involved
that's
with.
what I mean. Like, there's not as many Crash games that could be.
That could be
disappoint
as, like, genuinely bad.
Lately, though, I've noticed like more of a negative opinion towards the PS1 games, which I don't really feel is entirely fair. I feel like it's a bit of revisionism going on.
Yeah,
I agree.
It's the Nintendo revisionists. They always show up every generation to shit on everything.
It's true. Nintendo 64 was where it's at, dude.
Yeah, exactly. But you know why? I can tell you why. It's because the people that own PlayStation were like cool teenagers who just don't give a crap now.
They like grew up and got married and like moved on with their lives. Whereas like Nintendo 64 fans, I mean, what did we do? I personally am still mowing lawns to make ends meet.
I am Switzerland in this argument.
Here's the thing, like about Crash Bandicoot games, is this is what surprised me. It wasn't that people had a really positive opinion about them. It was that people had an opinion about them. I did not understand that. Like, I looked at them as being, well, this is an acceptable game. Like, it's an obviously ugly character, terrible character design.
That's
it's basically a pair of googly eyes attached to a torso.
He wears those ridiculous shorts.
The shorts are the least of his problems. I think the bigger problem is that he like has the disembodied Captain Crunch eyebrows.
Well, it's important to know in terms of, if you want to call him ugly, that's fine. But the actual physicality and presence, like the animation of the character, was hugely impressive on the PlayStation 1. I mean, when you're looking at characters who just kind of like melting potato face people is like the order of the day. You have a character who has a face that actually kind of operates.
Although you can't see it, you see his ass.
Yes, you see his ass most of the time, except when he runs at the screen.
Time. Yeah, when he runs at the screen. In other words, the worst stages of any game.
I want to say real quick in favor of the character design. I like how he's not like most other mascots at the time. He's not like super cool and super marketable. He's kind of dumb and kind of deranged.
His name is Crash Bandicoot. He's the most focused group.
Yeah, what do you mean he's not marketable? He's like a cool surfer guy. That is like the absolute textbook 90s marketable.
Like the marketing materials. He's not like that at all in the actual game.
Honestly, he's kind of a dork, and he's a bit of a dork. Really, and I think But no, I kind of do think that almost works in his advantage. It not necessarily makes him more likable, but makes him less obnoxious.
That I'm pretty sure was invented just so this game could exist.
They're a real animal. I live in Australia. I've seen a Bandicoot.
What if his name was like Crash Honey Badger or Crash Hyena? Like, it wouldn't make any damn difference, except Bandicoot sounds cooler.
Crash Tasmanian Devil?
He looks a lot like a hyena, actually, if you change the color of his skin.
He really is a hyena. He probably was, like, Crash Hyena, and the whole game was about collecting, like, animal carcasses.
Well, I can't remember. I believe they went through a bunch of different animals trying to pin down what they wanted to make Crash, if I remember my Crash history.
I believe it was focus group number 22, in which they narrowed down the Bandicoot, because people are like, Bandicoot sounds extreme.
Crash. Hang on.
Yogurt from that animal. Here's the thing. Like I said, I did not dislike this game. I don't dislike this game. I am just surprised that anybody still cares about these games. I don't know that they're that good.
Well, I mean, you have answered your own question by quoting sales figures, which is a lot of people play Crash.
That doesn't mean anything. Like, a lot of... Look... If you want to talk about sales figures,
PlayStation All-Stars came out, one of the
Teenage
biggest
Mutant Ninja Turtles _1 was one of the best-selling games of all time. And it's a dog turd of a game. But it sold a ton of copies, so that it's ubiquitous. It's a cultural milestone.
Don't the fact that these games are going to get remade mean anything in this?
No. Everything gets
Crash Bandicoot. I know you didn't care, but people like him. I don't know.
Here, let me.
Games don't sell 7 million copies for no reason.
Here's the problem. I think also is that I'm too old to have Crash Bandicoot as anything other than a very cynical marketing ploy.
I was going to bring this up, but not related to Crash Bandicoot's character himself, but just because I know you don't get the mechanics as much with this game.
That's true. I don't.
Let's talk about the game a bit.
I think we should.
The game is about traveling down a corridor in which the camera is directly behind your character, which means that anything that you have to avoid, you can't see because it's right in front of you, and the titular Bandicoot is between your eyeballs and the thing you're trying to avoid.
Okay, there are only like a couple of places that I personally promise the camera. There's any time you have to go backwards, which includes all the chase levels, and some of the sewer levels where you're like hanging on things. It's kind of hard to see things then. Other than that, though, I had an okay time with it.
Too a lot. I mean, look,
a lot of people like the game. That's what surprises me. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, the important thing, and again, this is kind of going to fall into the important category. Crash Bandicoot 1 is the second game that I owned on the PlayStation 1. So right from the onset, I'm like, yeah, Crash, I like this game. And your choices for a good platformer when Crash Bandicoot 1 came out
had you played Super Mario 64, and I'm not just saying that because...
I think it's interesting, though, because Crash and Super Mario 64 are like two very different solutions looking at the same problem, how to handle platforming in 3D.
Right.
I didn't own an N64. You know, I'm not insanely super mega rich. I didn't own a billion consoles all at once. But, you know, you did play other people's Mario 64. You played it, and it was, you know, it was a great game. It was really fun. But you went back and you played Crash, and you still liked Crash, which is
I had both. You know, I think you're both good.
I really loved a lot of PlayStation games, and I was not a N64 like purist. I felt like, and I got a PlayStation eventually, but I did Crash Band. Like I never when I got a PlayStation about I think I had one about maybe a year and a half or 2 years after the N64 was launched in North America. So I was a little bit late to the party, but that meant I could go back and just get a bunch of games for cheap because there was also Funkoland at that time. You can get a bunch of stuff that you missed. You know, what I went back to was not Crash Bandicoot. Like I tried it, but I was like, I don't want to play this. I want to play Twisted Metal. I want to play Symphony of the Night. I want to play Final Fantasy VII. I want to play... I was more into Nightmare Creatures than I was into Crash Bandicoot. Like I just can't.
It is a game that has to click with whatever you're specifically looking for, and I don't think that it is like a precise platforming game, but
precise platforming game where your character is in front of the things you're trying to avoid.
Yeah, but the thing that you're trying to jump on is always going to be in the right spot to land on. You look at it, and if you can't see it, you're going to land on it. That's how it works. You can't
see it because the game requires depth perception.
If you don't have faith in the level design and you try and overcorrect, you're going to fall into a pit. But that's not usually what happens.
That's just it.
See, the thing is, Super Mario 64 is really slippy and slidey and sloppy, and it has giant platforms to compensate.
But you're never in your own way.
I don't know. The camera sometimes gets drunk in that specific game.
Right,
I think
but you can stop what you're doing and refocus the camera. Whereas in Crash Bandicoot, your camera is always...
Yeah, but it never flips out on you. The camera is always going to be going... It's a nice, predictable camera. You know what it's going to do. It's not going to surprise you and be like, actually, I'm upside down.
That's how you play the game. My point is that the only reason why you think of the game as being fair and the camera is being where it needs to be is because you played it probably several dozens of times each stage when you were 9 years old, 10 years old, 11 years old, or younger. What I'm saying is that's not a fair assessment of the game because it's not like that.
I can't give it a fair objective assessment anyway, and you can't either because you're.
No, but I did play the game after having played earlier 3D platformers and also being old enough not to being able to afford other games if I didn't like it.
I mean, look, okay, so the other game I had, which is interesting because this ties into it. The other game I had was actually Jumping Flash 2, which is a similar but completely different kind of platformer.
That is okay, all right. So, I mean, look, on the PlayStation, yeah, okay. But also, Jumping Flash 2, at least the game was designed around the whole, I'm going to jump really high and then slowly land on this thing.
Yeah, it has a different, it has a mechanic. But see, the thing is, I'm convinced that I mean, you can go back and I've played Crash Bandicoot, on and off different versions of it.
Disclaimer, Super Mario 64 is good. I'm not going to deny that. But one thing about Crash I like is that the controls feel a lot tighter, and your moveset is generally a lot tighter. You have exactly what you need. And Mario 64, your controls are a little bit floatier and a little bit slippier, like Cal said. And you have, like, so many moves you really don't need.
No, you need them. No, you do need them. The game is built around those moves. You can do the wall jumps and the stomps and the everything. Crash Bandicoot is just Donkey Kong Country, except you're right behind Donkey Kong. You know what I mean?
I think Crash is a better game than Donkey Kong 64.
Well, yeah, but Donkey Kong 64 is not a good game. Like, Crash is a good game. I'm not going to say it's a bad game. I'm just saying
you kind of said that a bunch of times.
Okay, that's true. All right. So I'm going to say that Crash Bandicoot is it's a bad game in the sense that it is way worse than the surprisingly positive opinion I found it. But I mean, it's not a.
Argument would be it's a different kind of game. I mean, if you're just going to say, well, one of them is a open, quite less linear, wide open spaces, throwing yourself all over the place platformer, versus a game that is basically a very condensed, linear, like, sequence of platforming that you are supposed to be pretty on the mark about, but it does, it gives you lots of lives, lots of continues, or, it gives you an actual save system, which I think I should mention. Compared to Crash 1, this game actually has a save system. So
that is true. That makes a big difference.
It's a big difference. It added the slide. Your character does have a shadow, if I remember correctly. There are things that are there to kind of help you.
Yeah. I mean, the depth perception thing, I think, is a bigger problem than people who grew up playing the game can admit. In the same sense that, like, I was willing to tolerate a lot of things of early NES games that a lot of players now would not be able to tolerate.
You were very tolerant of Earthbound Beginnings on our last podcast.
Yeah, okay, that's a better example because that's much more in my wheelhouse. Where
certainly, I wouldn't, you wouldn't look at someone and say, well, you don't enjoy Crash Bandicoot because you're an idiot. Like, that's not true.
No, and I don't think that people who love Crash Bandicoot are idiots. I'm not. I mean, although I am deeply and unapologetically unfair to this game, I am not unfair to the people who like this game. Like, I am not denying your opinions. I just don't know.
Can we agree on one thing?
Yeah.
This game looks amazing. Can we agree on that?
For a PlayStation game, it's very nice looking.
If you, like, dug up Tex Avery's cords, reanimated him, explained to him what video games are, and just let him do it, make a game.
Crash is a very lively character, and they did a smart thing in this game, because from the first game, they went, all right, forget it, we're not going to have a location, instead we're just going to have a bunch of places that you go to, so there's a really nice set of levels in this game. There's
right, and it lets you choose which one, so you can...
Yeah, that's an interesting progressional thing. This game, you've got like 5 levels, I think, that you get to choose between, then you have to fight a boss. But each level has a really obvious collectible that you have to get to complete the level. But you're encouraged to replay the level to get the, like,
don't you have a choice
emeralds.
Of which collectibles you get?
Sort of.
You can get
crystals,
you can get multiple collectibles on one run.
Like,
but to progress through the game, to get through most of the levels, you just have to get the blatantly obvious crystal.
Right. You're never going to miss a crystal unless you try.
Right.
But in order to get the proper finished 100% super ending, you have to go through and collect a whole bunch of other extraneous crap. But like 99% of the game, you can get through without having to do any collecting, which I think is a nice compromise in terms of collectathons.
Although you don't really have to travel that far within a level to collect things, because the levels are about the size of, like, what? It's like running through a department store, except it's all just hallways.
Well, the interesting thing about the game is, like, the way they hide and, like, move elements around is just, like, you actually do have to explore the level, which I think is really, like, cute. I think there's also a time trial thing. You have to get to a certain part of the level.
That was 3. That's the third game.
No, not time trial. Like, there's crystals that disappear if you don't get through them fast enough or something.
Oh, yeah, I think
that is
river
true.
levels have that.
Yeah, which to me is irritating.
Some of the levels have, like, really obscure conditions for actually getting the second gem. Like, I know there's one stage you can't, like, to get one gem, you can't break a single box. You're never going to figure that out without looking at game FAQs or something like that.
I think it tells you, like, you've taken a box or something. It's really weird. Like, the end game message is, like, it's flipped around, and it's kind of like, hey. You gotta
at the end of most stages, tells you how many of the question mark boxes you got.
Yeah, and this one, like, it tells you, like like a number of 0 or something, and it's like, hey, what? No, I like that because I think it also, like, this again is just separating it with PlayStation games more. Like, it gives you an encouragement to replay the levels without being too forcing you through it. Because, you know, like, a lot of collectathon games are like, no, if you don't collect these items, you don't even get to finish the level. No, this game's like, it does.
You're never locked out of content for not getting all the collectibles except the ending.
And I don't know how many Xerxes played through, but the bosses are nice, I think. I think that they're well done for the most part.
I mean, they're kind of, I feel like the bosses are sort of not that. I only did the first 2, so maybe they get much, much better.
Kind of easy, but they're well designed. They're very...
they're interesting. I mean,
that's what I mean. Like, you know, they're not the same character. That they all have like a puzzle solution, and I think that's always nice to have like a boss that has solutions. And I think they're a standard sort of. You hit it like a few times.
I just. Okay.
I know you don't like Crash Bandicoot. You don't like anything.
I don't like
Crash
it, but I don't. I should not have disrespected it the way I have. I just want to make this part of the podcast more entertaining, because otherwise it's just going to be everybody like.
I hate to tell you,
that was fine for Earthbound, but Crash Bandicoot,
Bandicoot
vomited on. Oh, there are 2D segments in Crash Bandicoot as well, usually, like side-scrolling bits.
Lovely, yes.
I do want to say though, I don't mind the whole corridor thing, because it's how you do with 2D side-scrolling 3D.
Well, it's how you deal with. It's the least inventive possible solution to that problem. It's how you do it with like a limited staff, which is probably the reason why the original.
I think there was only like 11 people in the original Crash or something. It was a very small.
We've got
number.
like 11 people, and then like Jerry's pet turtle to work with. So here's how. Like, no, I mean that's the thing I do respect about Crash Bandicoot most of all, is that it stuck with it didn't overreach its boundaries. You know, it didn't say like, well, we're going to make this as, you know, it's going to be everything to everybody. And it's like, no, it's going to be like a kind of weird behind the back corridor 3D platformer, but we're going to do the best we possibly can with this thing. And they did. You know, that is as good as you're going to get with that model, which is, I think, why you don't see too many more games like this, unless you count kind of third person behind the back kind of endless runners.
Which, they have made an interesting slight.
Which I don't have a very high opinion of, but I do think that they owe a lot to Crash.
Yeah, there's elements of that, and can we rank this?
I mean, everybody else speak first, because it doesn't really matter what I think.
I just think about this even before recording. I think I know exactly where I'm going to put it. I don't want to run this by you guys.
Okay.
I want to say between Descent and Wonder Boy and Monsterland, and I'm not budging from that.
Wow, you put it lower than I would. I would put it underneath Alien Soldier.
What?
Yeah, eat it. What? You want some of this?
Right underneath. You're saying Super Castlevania 4. Crash Bandicoot.
I prefer Crash Bandicoot to Castlevania as a general rule. What are you going to do about it?
If I'm being completely biased here, I would also put it above Super Castlevania 4.
Well, you should.
My 7-year-old self would agree, but if I want to be fair and objective, I would put it below Descent.
Like I'm gonna put it where I would, this is Crash Bandicoot.
How much does it innovate? It's not an innovative game.
The best Crash Bandicoot of the Crash Bandicoots. It's probably the best.
Crash Bandicoot is like saying like this is the best like Geo Metro of all cars Geo produced in the 1990s.
Hold it. I really feel like I have not spoken very much throughout this night.
Because you haven't. You're feeling this way.
I just feel like anything I say would sort of just be parroting either Bob or Cal at this rate. Because
hang on.
All right. Well, let me.
Basher.
Well, let me just put it this way. Can you think of any other game like Crash on the PS1 that came anywhere near close to what it was trying to do? I would say that not even Spyro, as beloved as that was quite on the level of Crash, to be honest.
Spyro is very much a Mario 64, very much a collectathon game condensed and put on the PlayStation in a very quality, workable fashion. I think Crash is a completely different kind of platformer that you either like the style or you don't. And I know someone does
Crash
style.
Is as to Donkey Kong Country as Spyro is to Banjo-Kazooie.
Decent way of putting it.
Well,
yeah. So take
okay.
You didn't number it out this.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't. I'm sorry, I should have said more, but I do have to say on the whole, by and large, I agree with Bob and Cal. I will say that I'm not quite as big fans of Crash as they are, but I do really acknowledge that they were fantastic games, and, you know, back when I had absolutely nothing to do but play video games as a kid, which honestly isn't that much different from now, except I have a job, but I really did enjoy Crash, 2 in particular, which is worlds, almost a world above the first game, which, let's be honest, is pretty rough and way too difficult, especially if you're trying to 100% it.
2 fixes pretty much every single problem in the first game.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Xerxes booted up Crash 1 compared to Crash 2.
No, well, I
both
played both
go insane on Crash
when
1.
they were new. Crash 1, I mean, granted, that's like, Marmoset's, like, trip through, like, trippy, wavy, gravy, hallucinogenic dirt jungle.
I feel bad about this, but I will accept Below Alien Soldier if everyone else is okay with it. It's my bias show if I put it there.
Yeah.
How can you consider it even better than Castlevania 4?
I'm going to...
Bandicoot 2? Hearing about this game is like saying you care deeply about the opinion of Diet Coke. Like, it is not I don't know.
I'm sorry to be a Judas here, but I gotta agree with Xerxes on this. Then again, I am biased towards the Castlevania series, but I would...
As a longtime fan of Crash Bandicoot 2, and someone who has played the game recently, and, you know, it's not like I played it 15 years ago, and I'm like, yeah, I still probably like it because I didn't play it recently. No, I did play it pretty recently. I still like it. I'm not gonna pick it lower for my. I'm not gonna say any lower for myself. You know, we can negotiate it down, but that's where I would personally put it.
I'm not going below Descent. That's final.
Okay.
Because like, look, I mean, you got like a little lower than that.
Here's the thing. I'll meet you. I'll put it above Super Mario Land.
Okay.
Because I recognize that Crash Bandicoot is doing something and perfecting something that in a way that Super Mario Land couldn't and wouldn't do. You know, Super Mario Land is very much working off of a formula, whereas Crash Bandicoot was inventing something.
They had to try. They did try.
Well, I mean, Super Mario Land, they were trying really hard to make a game that you could look at on basically a calculator. And make sense out of. But it's more of a technical achievement, I think, than it is a game design achievement. Whereas Crash Bandicoot 2...
2 is very important. Crash Bandicoot 1 would be significantly lower.
Right, it would be much lower. But Crash Bandicoot 2 is I mean, I got to give it. Like, I would sooner say, I'm going to play more Crash Bandicoot 2 than say I'm going to play Super Mario Land for, like, the 50th time all the way through.
Well, like, I'm not gonna try and argue with that. I do think it's a good game.
Who says it's like, seriously, Worms Armageddon?
I mean, it is tricky because I do like Space Harrier a lot as well. It all came down to just personal feeling. So Super Mario Land just above is okay. I can handle that.
I can work with that. I'm happy with that.
Below Space Harrier, above Super Mario Land. So
right.
Tenga, just curious. Not that it matters, but Tenga, like, what do you think?
So I'm going to agree. I think that's a fair assessment. Although I do want to tack on a writer here. Even if I'm not the biggest Crash fan, I do think that his first 3 games, 2 in particular, are quite entertaining. And I honestly like Crash Bandicoot more than the Uncharted series, which has become Naughty Dog's current wheelhouse, which I honestly think is kind of overrated.
Okay. I mean, but here, let's
not beat up.
Let me throw you guys a.
I can and I will.
Bone here, like, do you guys? Do most of us believe that Crash Bandicoot 2 is better than Space Harrier?
I'm not like. I've never played much Space Harrier, so I would.
That's not a fight I want to fight.
No, I like Space Harrier more. I've got to agree with you there.
Space Harrier is very much
I think Space Harrier is like Oh, it's so tough because, like, if you were to say, if I had to play a game for like a couple of hours, I'd probably take Crash 2.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
That's the thing. It's really tough. Like, it's just really like a coin flip for me if you had to do that, because it's like that is such like a decision. Like, it's totally like I wake up one morning and I'd be like, I prefer Space Harrier. Next morning, Crash 2.
The thing about Space Harrier, and the reason why I'd still put Crash 2 below Space Harrier, it's not really so much about gameplay or which game I would rather play. It's more about which game has character, which game has soul, which game has heart. And Crash Bandicoot 2 has about as much heart as like a Skechers commercial. Like, I
agree with that. It's
once they ripped out Torna, it's all downhill.
It is a super focus grouped, like mid 90s, like Poochie the dog kind of game.
I mean, look at what they've done with the art style. Look how good the game looks.
It definitely got worse. Is the ... It's really funny.
Right. I mean, the best thing about Crash are those commercials with the guy in the Crash. Like,
I love those commercials.
Those were great.
Those were great.
I mean, that was really good. They were building on what Sega of America had already done in the early 90s, but they did it very well, and it really was good, and it was clever, and it was of its time, but it was great. But the character design, everything else, like artistically about Crash Bandicoot, is very, very dull to me.
It can be dull. The actual execution is quite good. The technical level of Crash is very high.
Whereas Space Harrier is such a like LSD trip of a 80s arcade.
It's a wonderful world they produce, definitely.
It is. You are welcome to the fantasy zone.
I don't know. My counter argument is, what does Space Harrier really do once you get past the whole scaling thing?
Cyclops Mammoth.
I mean, then you get attacked by fighter jet robot things. This is a lot of stuff going on.
Centipedes as far as the eye can see. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm torn. I feel like
Crash is definitely like, if you look at a lot of the mascot platformers on the 16 bits, they sort of just ripped parts of those out and just made a character out of those parts.
It is like I'm not a big fan of Rare's collectathons either. Like, I would not like, although I'd probably rather play Banjo and Kazooie, I would give Crash 2 an edge just because it's different. Whereas Banjo Kazooie it's not different. It's just.
Can I before we wrap up, I would like to say about Crash Bandicoot, because it's something that I was thinking of recently. It's really interesting because the recent Mario releases have actually sort of pulled in closer to Crash Bandicoot, which is really strange. But the Super Mario 3D Lands or Worlds or whatever, that is true. The Wii U one, that's more like Crash Bandicoot, which is so interesting to me that they actually sort of merged Crash Bandicoot and Mario together recently to make like a kind of.
I mean, it's more like Crash Bandicoot in the sense that they created like the levels are courses to go through. But there's so much more you can do.
There's a lot more, but they took this sort of concept, like they drew in to a more linear game. From what I remember, Miyamoto looked at Crash 1 at the when they were. When they were announcing Mario 64, whenever that period was at like whatever E3 or whatever, and he was like, "Wow, your game's so great," or whatever. Like, he was really enthusiastic about it.
I think he would have had to have liked it. He did not like Donkey Kong Country, but I think that was more about the art design.
Yes, definitely.
Anything else. Famously, Ken Kutaragi was like, say Crash 1 was like I don't know what his exact words were, but to paraphrase him, this game is a dog turd, and I cannot believe Sony wants to associate itself with it. But Ken Kutaragi made how many games? Like 0? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that that's a fair.
Yeah.
So right below Space Harrier, right above Super Mario Land.
I think that's as good as we're going to
fight Crash, but you did it.
Yeah, I think that's as good as we're going to get for
now. My hat goes off to thee.
My 7-year-old self is pleased, and now he's going to go watch SWAT Cats.